Hi, Paul Thomson here. I've done thousands of hours of recording of live musicians over the years on my own music, but also recording for sample libraries, all kinds of different locations, studios, at home, in vocal booths, all kinds of stuff. I'm going to walk you through the recording and editing and mixing of a string session. So this is a small string group playing on my album. I've picked something that is just strings and was recorded by Isabel Gracefield in Rack Studio 1. It's got a couple of things to consider, including a featured violin solo played by the wonderful Jonathan Morton. So here's my session spreadsheet. I'm going to flip over to the channel list and you can pause this and have a look if you're interested to know exactly what mics were used. But these were the mics that were set up. Now, not everything was used. I'll talk you through that in a moment. We did a rough mix in the room so we could hear what it sounded like. And this is all recorded through the API desk in Studio One. And then we had a reverb running on that just to give it a little bit of splosh on it. If we look at our take sheet, you'll see here are the takes. There's a few notes here. Let's flick over to the Pro Tools session. Now you can see that each mic is coming up a separate channel here. This is my mix session. So basically we've got all of the mics that I've used. You'll see that certain mics I didn't use. We'll come back to that in a second. And then I've got a bus here at the end, which has a Cinematic Rooms reverb on. I've selected the Bright Hall preset, but shortened the reverb time. I'll show you what the effect of that is in a moment. And then on the master channel, I've got a very gentle TG mastering, really more for the kind of vibe and sound of it than anything else. So let's have a quick listen. I'll flick over to the session here and I'll play just the first few bars so you can hear what it sounds like. So you can hear there my reverb as well if I just play the end of a chord. It's not so long that you hear it going after the musician's natural fade. That's quite important to me. So if I just play the chord and stop it abruptly, you can hear it's very natural but quite short. I don't really want to create a fake sound around this. I want to get something that sounds almost like the character of the room that it's recorded in, but just a little bit larger and a little bit more spacious. And Rack Studio One has room for probably about 35 musicians in. It's got a lot of wood in there. It's a very beautiful sounding room, but it's not as reverberant as, you know, a hall would be, a concert hall or something like this. So just wanted to add a little bit more of that so it sounded a little bit more classic, a little bit more of a concert hall sound. So if we select this last section, I'm going to show you what mics I'm using, and I'm going to show you the mics that I'm not using and why. First up, the Decca Tree. Now the Decca Tree is made of 3 mics. These are the M50s. You'll see that the center mic is a Valve 47, so it's a very similar mic. Let's start with the Deccas. So here are the Deccas on their own. Now if I push up the center mic and add that in as well, so you can see what the effect of that is. Now you'll see that when I take it out, it widens the stereo field. And the Decca Tree is incredibly useful, but it does have quite a centralizing effect on the overall sound. So for me, I wanted to get a little bit of extra width in this sound, and that's how I've mixed all the other mics. But this is the core sound that I'm going to mix around. So that's my Decca. I'm only using the sides. Now I'm also using the KM86s, which are in an ORTF configuration, near coincident. They're cardioid mics. ORTF stands for Office de Radiodiffusion Télévision Française, I think. And that is just, the technique is named after the people who first started using it. It's a great sound. Let me show you the difference between that and the Decca sound. So I'm using that. You can see that I've got it actually set at -3. These KM86s give me an alternative to the center channel of the Decca tree. They're obviously stereo, but they're not as wide as the sides of the Decca tree, but they're fulfilling that slightly different sound color, slightly different stage presence. They're giving me a really useful kind of front to back type of sound. I do have a wide configuration here that I haven't used. These are the Sonys and they sound like this. It's a really nice sound, but it's not something that I chose in the end. Again, this is all going to be very subjective. It's about your taste. It's about the type of sound you want to colour with the different microphones you got available. But it's incredibly important to capture these things and to have these alternatives ready when you're starting to mix, because you never know which ones you're going to lean into. So those are the room mics, and now we're going to look closer in at the close mics. So I'm just going to go through them so you can hear them. Okay, so let's put all of those in together. So looking at the position and the panning here, I've positioned these mono channels in the place in the stereo field where the musicians are sitting and where I want the sound to come from. I'm using quite a wide panning here, and I've positioned, as you can see, the violas are kind of tilted towards the right hand side and the seconds are tilted quite a way towards the left hand side. So I'm creating a slightly artificial gap in the middle where I'm placing the basses, and that's just 2 players, but it's nice to have them right down the center. Now, if I play the same thing again and I add in first the Decca, then I'll switch that off and add in the 86s, and then finally I'll put them both in. So check out the differences here. So you can hear that the quietest component of the sound is my 86s, and as I said, I'm using them really just to fill out a component of the sound that I'm missing when it's not there. It's not making a huge difference, but it is making a difference, and it is an important component of the sound. You can hear that my placement and my levels for each individual instrument mic are reinforcing what's coming from the Decca sides. So you have to be careful that you're not doing something that's so different. You know, you can move an instrument slightly in the stereo field by positioning the close mic and adding enough of that it directs your ear in that direction, and the Decca will kind of back that up. But if you move it too far away, it will sound weird, and it will sound like you've got the instrument in 2 different places. So it's something to be aware of. The final thing to say is that you'll see that my soloist over here is higher in level. It's hotter than all of the other individual close mics, in order that I'm kind of helping that sound to kind of sing over everything else, because ultimately what we're doing here, you know, if you're standing in the room, you'll hear it perfectly. But what we're doing here is artificial, and you have to ensure that you're still kind of following the intention, the musical intention of the piece of music. So I'm giving a little bit of a boost to that close mic just to make sure that it's very, very audible to the audience who the attention should be on. Now, the other thing to talk about is performance and editing. There's a thing that you have to remember about a recorded performance. When you're playing live, there you can have all kinds of beautiful slight imperfections that happen, and it might be that, you know, as a player travels through a passage, one of the notes, you know, none of the notes are going to be absolutely dead on, like they would be if you'd auto-tune them, of course, and we don't want that. But what you'll find is that, you know, if you listen to a genuinely live performance, you'll hear imperfections in it. And I'm not talking about a live album, because many live recordings have been edited. But a real live performance that you sit in and you listen to, you'll see that there are imperfections all the time, and it's part of the humanity of the music. Now, you can keep a certain amount of that stuff in a recorded performance, but you have to be careful, because if there's something when you're listening to it again and again and it catches your ear, it will become annoying. It has the potential to become annoying. So I'm very, very careful about how I edit a live performance like this. So as you can see over here, if I highlight this section, you'll see that take 5 is the core of this whole thing. And these are individual regions that I've cut into, because there's the odd thing that I just want to tidy up. And as you'll see here, I've used a little bit here from take 3, and there will be these occasions. Take 4 has a little bit here. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying not to destroy the inherent performance, but I just want to make sure that any slight imperfections are not too jarring to the ear on repeated listen. And that's part of the skill set of making a record, producing a record, editing tracks for a record. You have to understand that it's going to be listened to again and again and again and again. And so you have to walk that very fine line between not over editing, so you edit all the life out of it, but also of making sure that there isn't anything that's going to bring the listener out of the experience on repeated listenings. There's one final thing that we did, and this is something that's, again, it's not totally necessary, but here I move from a low position to a very high position. So just check out this change here. Now, these are some of the best players that I've ever worked with. So this is nothing to do with the player's ability or anything like that. But if you want to get that kind of entry absolutely crystal clear, then this is something that's done very, very often in recording sessions, and especially in film and TV sessions. If you have a big transition, whether it's a transition in position, in timbre, in kind of timing, maybe it's something where there's a sudden tempo change, you will often do these things as a pickup. So we did a couple of performances where it was just the whole performance. And then finally, we did a couple of pickups, which if you look at my take sheet here, so the cover take here, stopping just before the high section and dropping in to find the note. So what I wanted to do was I didn't want to make the players play it again and again and again, because you lose some of the life and some of the joy from it. But I wanted to give them the opportunity, because all of these incredible players are perfectionists and they want to nail it. They want to make it absolutely perfect. And so I wanted to give them the opportunity to just find the new position, absolutely hone in on it, and then we could do the pickup. Now, there are two things that I had to make sure of when I did that. One was to ensure that the start was immaculate, which it of course was, because once they'd had that couple of extra seconds to get into it. And the second thing was the pacing of the edit. Now, this is something that you have to feel. So I played it from back here, spent a little bit of time moving it around, and feeling the way that it was being conducted really wonderfully as well, and had a listen in and got that nailed down. So just check this out. Now, the only other thing to note, that if this was a tempo change, then what I would have done is I would have played out to the end, and then stopped, and then we would have reset the click in Pro Tools so that you got the incoming tempo for a bar clear or maybe 2 bars clear before the players had to start at the tempo change. And that is something that's again a very, very common technique. If you want to, when you're doing something like this where you want to have absolute precision in the recording because you know it's going to be used again and again and again, or listened to again and again and again, and you want it to be absolutely perfect, then that's another little trick that you can use to get that transition perfect. So that's the edit. The only other things to note are to get the opening fade so that you hear the musicians breathe into the notes. This is an essential part of listening to human music. Have a listen. So I don't want to cut that too close. I want to keep that sound. That's a super important sound in the final recording. The final fade and how you get out of the ambience of the studio and the noises, the movement of the humanity of the players is really important as well, and timing that correctly. And here is how I've done it in this recording. So just enough. You're following the natural fade out of the players without forcing it down too much. You're just following it a little bit, and then as the players naturally kind of come away, you're nearly down, and then you just lose that ambience nice and gently to get a nice natural out to the sound. So there we go. That is the process. As I say, what you're listening to now is my pre-master, and then this went off to Cicely Bolston, who did an incredible job of mastering the album. The album is up on all streaming platforms today. This is track 11. It's called Melancholy. Go and take a listen. Thank you very much for watching. Hope some of this has been useful. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.